of your time. Thank you, Catherine, for starting the recording. We want to welcome you all to our Urban Collaborative Collab Talk. Thank you for joining us. I am Ruchika Chopra, and I work with the Urban Collaborative. Again, I'm joining us today from Brooklyn, New York. I am here along with my colleagues, Executive Director of the Urban Collaborative, Lauren Katzman, and Project Manager, Catherine Benedict. We will be supporting this conversation today, and we'll keep an eye out for questions that you may have for our presenter and answer any Urban Collaborative related questions. Let me remind you that we will be recording this session and will have it available for you and your colleagues to review. During the discussion, we ask if you can please post your questions in the chat. We want this to be interactive, and we'll do our best to answer the questions that you have during the presentation. Our collab talk today is about the role of AI in educational services and legal considerations. Many of us are asking the question, how will AI impact teaching and learning? Many of us are asking the question, how will AI support or create additional barriers for our students with disabilities? And many of us are asking the question, how do we successfully integrate the use of AI into our systems, policies, and procedures? What are the legal implications for us to do so? And how do we prevent privacy and other data-related issues when AI is being used? Our presenter today will help us with our question on the role of AI in educational services and legal considerations, Gretchen Shipley. Gretchen is a respected leader in educational law and technology. She advises school districts and delivers workshops to students, employees, and district leaders nationwide on the promotion of cyber citizenship in the school community, data privacy, school safety, and cybersecurity. Gretchen created a short video that we shared with you all when you registered, providing you with a brief introduction to some legal considerations when using AI in education. If you did not get to watch it, we will put the link. Lauren, if you can put that link in the chat. So you're welcome to watch it after the presentation. We will also be posting it along with the recording of this session. Before we start with Gretchen, can you move the slides to the Portland meeting? Thank you. Before we start with Gretchen, a reminder about our spring meeting, which is happening in Portland in another few weeks. I think it's 2 weeks. We look forward to seeing you all there, where we will continue our conversations and discuss creating a roadmap to equitable and inclusive schools. Information about the agenda, as well as registration information, can be found on our website, urbancollaborative.org. If you're not currently a member and want to join the over 100 school district members from 29 states across the country who are our Urban Collaborative members, please email us at urbancollaborative@asu.edu. We now...
You want to do some at a time? No, I'll do it one. Okay.
Sorry, we now welcome Gretchen to start us off on our conversation today on the role of AI in educational services and legal considerations. Welcome, Gretchen.
Thank you. Thank you to the Urban Collaborative and everyone who's attending today. Again, I'm from F3 Law. We're a full-service education law firm, and my area of expertise is education technology. I head up a legal practice dedicated to education technology, but I'm really excited that one of my partners is also here today, kind of hanging out in the background, but he's going to step in and correct me when I'm wrong. It's Howard Fullfrost, and Howard Fullfrost is a nationwide expert and leader in special education law. And so, Howard, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and say hello. But
good afternoon, everyone. I'm Howard Fullfrost. You might have met me at a previous collaborative meeting, and I'll be in Portland, and I look forward to seeing you all there.
So what's really exciting about today, and again, we're here to benefit you. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. I've read through the preliminary questions. We're going to try to answer them all today, but I want to make your time valuable. I know how busy you all are. So feel free, if you're on the recording side of this and you're seeing this later and you want to reach out to Howard and I, feel free. So what's really interesting is the intersection between AI and special education services. I'm actually Zooming in from a conference right now. I'm the speaker about AI, and it's our lunch break. And it's all the district functions are supposed to be here. And I keep saying, where's the special ed team? That's where these accommodations, the role of AI in special ed is so important. And so to have this focused group, and some of you have a significant leadership role in your state, in your educational organization. And I see emerging technologies as a leadership platform. You are going to be the most smartest person in your organization now about AI and its legal implications. And so taking this information back to your organization, to my objectives for today are to help give you tools on how you can draft your guidelines, how you can make sure your process and procedures are legally compliant. And I'm going to try to do it in the most basic way possible. We're just going to talk about how AI is being used in your organization, some safety tips, the role of parental consent, and then finally some policy tips. So those are sort of the 4 areas we're going to touch on. But again, I really encourage you to put questions in the chat, and the folks at Urban Collaborative are going to help monitor those. And feel free to cut me off. I talk fast, so jump in anytime. But with that, I wanted to kind of turn to, I speak with a lot of district administrators about the role of AI in education. And they keep talking about, let's get prepared for AI to be incorporated in education. And frankly, as you all may already know, it's actually already here. It's already integrated into many of your business operations and many of your educational operations. You know, you all probably see that your emails, it'll finish your sentence before you've typed it. Or you hop in your car in the morning and your navigation system tells you how many minutes it'll take you to get to the grocery store, even though that's not where you're going and you didn't ask to go there, but it knows where you like to go. So I just really want to start with a foundational concept that AI is already integrated into our everyday lives, but what kind of safety protocols can we put into place, mainly around student data privacy, to make sure that we are keeping our kids and our students safe and not inadvertently resharing their data with the universe. And we'll do a little bit more of a deep dive. But I would love to hear from the folks here. If you all want to drop it in the chat or unmute yourselves, but maybe put it in the chat. How many of you are actively using an AI tool, either in your day-to-day business operations or with students? If we have any of the special education practitioners, if you want to put in the chat what type of AI tools you're using, and it's okay to say, I use ChatGPT. I mean, I'm not the AI police. I'm just curious. There's so many different ways AI can be incorporated to build in efficiency and to deliver special education services. And I'm just curious if any of you are already utilizing it in your day-to-day professionally, or I suppose personally. And I'm going to share examples with you that I've heard from others, but I just thought to kick things off, you all might want to share on your own. So I don't see any coming in the chat, so I will go ahead. Okay, ChatGPT and Google Bard. And thank you. And I know you're from the state of Maryland, I believe. And so ChatGPT is a popular one. And I understand that ChatGPT has 2 different models. There's the free version and a paid version. And one of those has privacy settings and one of them doesn't. But I received the hard sell that ChatGPT upgraded paid version is very impressive. Gemini Ultra at the moment, great. And so we're going to talk about some of the data privacy questions you should be asking at a district level, what you should be looking for each of these tools. So with that, I'll just kind of dive in. And so I want to talk specifically, starting the conversation about AI's role in special ed, and then we'll talk about it more broadly, because again, my job is to bring different levels, different cabinet positions together so that AI policy in a district has everyone's voice at the table. And more often than not, they're not including it. They're not including the special education team. And it's not just about general education, curriculum and instruction. It is parents might have a request for an accommodation. There's note-taking tools that are being used. There's, you know, I have been to conferences where they're really encouraging staff to use ChatGPT to write their IEPs. So I just want to flag some of these issues for you as we walk through the legal framework for AI. So Let's say note-taking might be, a note-taking tool might be used for an accommodation request. So I don't know if any of you have had the experience where someone records a meeting and it generates, and it takes notes for you in AI. It is very impressive and very efficient, but there's some significant privacy concerns. So Howard and I may be participating in a confidential settlement conference, and a parent may record the meeting and it generates notes that are shared out with the group afterwards. And different states have different consent requirements. In the state we are in presently, you have to notify somebody before you can record them, or it's considered illegal eavesdropping. So definitely anytime someone's going to be using a note-taking tool, where they're recording a meeting, just like Zoom, it pops up and lets you know that it is being recorded. Confidential settlement conferences, meetings with your lawyers, special education, has very sensitive information. It can be very contentious. You want to make sure that legal meetings, confidential settlement conferences aren't being recorded and using open generative AI, because then that data may not be kept confidential. Open generative AI means it's being reshared and the knowledge base is being rebuilt, and that that may break that line of confidentiality. So it's important that we talk about, when you go to put your systems in place and your procedures in place, that any sort of recording of a meeting or note-taking tool, that you provide people with notice. It's not a bad idea to get their consent, but also that you're not breaking anyone's confidentiality as well. And this is not just for you administrators, it's for your staff, it's for parents, it's for students, anybody who has the ability to turn on these note-taking tools. We don't want them recording somebody without their knowledge or permission. One area in special education we've also seen why they want to use the note-taking tools is that it can create a transcript. And correct me if I'm wrong, you're all the special education professionals, but that sometimes you submit your transcript of your meeting to OAH. Well, as we'll talk about, AI has significant issues with accuracy. And so, a transcript from an AI tool is not legally compliant. It may have bias, it may have misinformation. And so that's an area where we've already seen disputes from a legal standpoint about parents trying to submit a transcript that was generated by AI tool, and challenging the accuracy and the quality of that particular transcript. Do you all have any questions specifically about these specific applications? This is what I'm trying to do is, I do see some questions. I'll use that, get to those. So I'm trying to lay the foundation of, it is used not only by your staff, but it is also going to be requested by your parents. And let's talk about what guidelines you can put in place as we talk through this presentation, about what guidelines can address those. So again, the permissions, the notice, open AI versus closed AI. When you do an IEP, you may be incorporating parental consent to a particular tool. So just again, I wanted to put this framework right up front so we have these in mind as we get into the specific details. So there's a comment here from Horatio about the enterprise versions of some AI will keep the data in-house, and that just the personal accounts train the models. That's a data privacy issue, and that's correct. So there's a difference. If it's open generative AI, like some versions of ChatGPT, you are resharing the data. And we'll talk a little bit more about data privacy, versus closed AI, where everything is kept in-house and is much safer tool to use. So that is another threshold question. Is it open AI? Is it closed AI? If it's open, does it have a privacy setting that you can implement? And later on, I sort of have a step-by-step list of questions you should be asking when adopting these tools and evaluating them. So one of the questions that we received was, what about Teams translation for languages? And that is AI generated. So we've received this question also. It's a great question, a legal question about using AI to do translation. So a couple things to think about there. Is it closed AI? That is preferable, because if it's open generative AI and it's being reshared with the universe, you want to make sure that the data being fed into it doesn't include personally identifiable information. So it's preferable that it's closed AI. And even then, we want to make sure that we have a human in the loop. That's kind of the catchphrase. You need a human oversight to make sure that what has been generated in that transcript or translation is not biased and is accurate. So even though it can be efficient to translate documents, ultimately it's best to have human oversight to make sure that it is not biased and that it's accurate, so that it's, not skewed information. Okay, so I want to talk more broadly about the role of, started specifically at special ed, but again, how for you administrators, bringing your team together and being a leader within your district, because typical educational software is probably vetted through your IT department or your business department. Special educational software tools or accommodations should probably go through a similar or the same vetting process. That vetting process looks for data privacy standards and compliance. The other thing that special education staff, all staff should be made aware of, just because it's free doesn't mean that it gets to bypass that vetting process. I've heard that a lot today, actually, at the AI conference where I am, is that staff will implement a program thinking, well, it's free, so I don't need to ask permission. But free isn't free. If it is a free piece of software, it usually means that they are either selling the data that they're collecting or that they are doing targeted advertising to students or parents or staff, and which targeted advertising to students is illegal in many states. So again, it's just important that you have a process in place to evaluate the different tools, and that each individual staff member or IEP team, they do need to be vetted, especially when there's open generative AI, to make sure that they are safe tools to use for the students. Some examples of things we have seen is, and our role as lawyers. Howard and I, it's funny because normally you think of lawyers as being part of, maybe a legal challenge for, special education rights. But, my job as a technology lawyer is to make sure that the contracts are reviewed, those terms and conditions are reviewed. And so I can think of many examples where school districts are rolling out, or even I know we have folks on a statewide level here. So even here in the state of California, the Student Aid Commission reached out to us. They have a chat bot that goes to that they're rolling out to make available to every high school senior in the state of 40 million people, but is for process. First, it was open generative, and we're like, high school seniors chatting with an emotionally intelligent chatbot. You need to have some safety protocols in place. Is there threat monitoring? You wouldn't want the district to be responsible if they had a self-harm threat and it went unchecked. We put some limitations around the knowledge base that it was building. We tried to make it closed AI and say the feedback can only be limited to FAFSA, and the objective of that particular chatbot. But that was an example of, they started to roll it out and then they brought us to the table and we had to go in and we required parental consent. We drafted a parental consent form. There was several steps that needed to kind of be slowed down. And our job is not to say no to implementing the technology. It's to help you put some protocols and procedures in place to make sure it's done responsibly. Also work with a district that wanted to put in and I know you're special ed folks, so I don't want to go too far off base, but they came to F3 and they said, can you come to our board meeting next week? We want to approve a contract for a camera surveillance system that uses AI. It can detect guns. We want to stop school shootings. Of course, we want to stop school shootings. That is great. It was a $9 million contract, and it used not only AI, but also collected biometric data, license plate readers, and facial recognition. And I said, you might have a big brother problem on your hands. That might not be well perceived by your community. And so let's stop and think about, that's not even a legal issue. That is a PR issue. So with all of these, I know it's exciting. Your staff are excited to implement these tools, but because they're impressive and they're efficient, but you need to look at the data privacy component, what information is being collected from these students, and how is it being used. So this slide that I have up here is just to demonstrate, it's not, it's coming into your business office for business operations. I've seen business offices are using it to route transportation. So I know with special ed, there's a lot of transportation concerns. Well, just so you think of your Uber app where it tells you where the car is and how many minutes and all of that great stuff. They have something similar now for students, which I can see being a value to a special education parent to see where your student is and when they're going to be at the bus stop, except it's also geolocation tracking. So that could be a privacy concern for that parent at the same time. So it's just making sure that parents are fully informed of its purpose, its capabilities, what information is being shared, and in that case, getting their buy-in or their permission. And then obviously students wanting to use apps like ChatGPT to complete their classwork. Now that's something on a very micro level. We look at it from an educational standpoint as to whether or not a teacher would allow that in the classroom, or if it can be used for individual assignments. And that's language we put into your acceptable use policy. Typically what school districts are doing, saying, that open generative AI tool can only be used when permitted by a staff member. So it's doing great things with arts education, for example. It can create essays, great, but we want to make sure it's only being used and there's not academic dishonesty and misrepresentation. So I wanted to, and then staff, I want to make sure that we point out that labor-related issues may be coming down the pike concerning AI as well. So there's budget cuts coming, across the country. We're in an inflation crisis and many school districts are looking at layoffs. So AI may be used to build efficiencies. It may be able to, if I'm a teacher and, they'd be using to make sub plans, to make lesson plans. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but you also pay them for prep time. And so your labor union may weigh in on this as far as the role of staff and what kind of training they require and training they need. So another layer you want to add to your district policy and guidelines on the use of AI. Okay, with that, I'm going to kind of keep rolling forward, like the general objective, the approach that most districts are taking at this point is because there's a lot of fear out there. And I want to, our objective is to make sure that we are maximizing the potential for AI while putting safeguards and procedures in place so that if there is misconduct, you can hold people accountable. How do you do that? Acceptable use policies or cyber citizenship training, professional development for your staff, working with your special education parents to make sure that they have buy-in in support of a particular AI tool. And I would, welcome if you all want to share, this is kind of the fun part, the potential for misconduct. If any of you have had an experience that you want to share in the chat or unmute of, unfortunately or unfortunately, there's really creative ways in which AI can be misconduct. Oh, the question is, I'm curious how many districts have policies around use of AI for staff and students. So sorry, I'm getting a little off track. We'll come back to misconduct. Start thinking about your misconduct stories. So what I do is I work with school districts. I work with county offices of ed. It's actually where I am today, where there will be 30 to 50 school districts present, and we are doing an all-day workshop on drafting their guidelines, their policies, the resolutions. So most school districts I work with have them in development, and we're happy to work with any of your school districts. It is bringing all the stakeholders to the discussion to develop those guidelines. And different communities have different standards and expectations of how they want to implement AI. Yes, it is happening, and I'd encourage you all to lean into that conversation at your school district as well. A segue to misconduct and policy making. A question we've been getting a lot recently is school board members, this is when we're doing on a national level, are really concerned about deep fakes that can be created through AI because there's an election coming up. And they see it on a national level. Deep fakes is when you use someone's video image or their voice and you can recreate an inappropriate image. Now, we've seen it at the middle school level where they're making sexually explicit videos of middle school students. It's not somebody else's body. It's an AI generated body with someone's face, which is horrible. Or, we're seeing misinformation campaigns for elections. So there is definitely the potential to misuse it. So how do you address that? How do you get out in front of that without eliminating AI altogether? Well, part of that is a couple things. Having a way to hold people accountable through district policies and guidelines and procedures. The other piece is educating through cyber citizenship or through professional development, how to identify misinformation. How to look at a picture of Kate Middleton and realize that it's been photoshopped or whatever. It's just helping people better understand, to be more skeptical. Your community, this is what board members want to hear, is that, their community isn't going to believe everything they see on the internet. So again, I gave a few examples of Horatio, you've done a search and there aren't many publicly available. Reach out. I have some sample policy language. I'd be happy to help you. Sorry, I'm reading the chat. He's looking for some policies. But if you all want to share in the chat any sort of misconduct you've come across, I'd be happy to address any of those, or we can share them with the group. ChatGPT is a really obvious one. Students using it to draft essays. Well, so some school districts are just quick to shut AI down, but really, that doesn't seem. We also need future ready learners and the reality that ChatGPT is probably being used in the workplace, and how to maximize it, and the prompt engineering side of it in a positive way, especially with our special education student population, how they can utilize it to maximize their opportunities as well. So question is it advisable to first develop statewide guidelines before individual districts develop their own? So one thing that's happening, and this is why there isn't a lot of set policy out there yet, there's a race to regulate. The challenge with policy is that it usually is rooted in law, and it goes through several rounds of adoption. And frankly, there is a number of pending bills on the state and national level, and we don't know what's going to pass. We hope, and what it looks like is that the responsibility for AI misinformation, for example, is going to fall back on the software developer and not on a school district to be able to identify it. So there's a bunch of pending legislation. So the concern that many states I've seen have is, well, once we adopt something, it's going to change as soon as new legislation rolls out. So most school districts are starting to develop what we call, instead of policy, they'll just do guidelines. They're updating their acceptable use policy for students, and they're putting guidelines together for staff. So I don't know that one's right or wrong. The problem is if you wait to do it on a statewide level, then you have nothing in place, and that has its dangers too. So some school districts are going ahead with no framework and and some are just shutting it down. And I think both are sort of dangerous. So I think that school districts should start talking about putting some guidelines in place while we're waiting for something on a broader level. And Howard and I work directly at the state level as well. And we work with different states around the country. So if you're one of the folks from the State Board of Education, we're happy to work with you all and collaborate on what something might look like on a statewide level in your particular state. But it's going to vary because, as I mentioned, there's a race to regulate right now. And but in the meantime, it's about providing resources to your district. What are their community norms? We have some school districts, like where I live, we have the home of Apple. It's very forward thinking. We also have border communities that they're very nervous about sharing any type of information because they might not be citizens. And so it's just every community is going to have a different level of acceptance of using open generative AI. Is there any case law around the misuse of AI? Sometimes that's an impetus for developing guidelines when districts are not proactive. I have not seen case law, because case law requires not only a lawsuit, but that a court has come out, ruled on it, and published it. And so one thing that's happening that's pending right now is the intellectual property side of who owns what is generated by ChatGPT. And we are waiting for that case law to come out. Most misconduct, especially student misconduct, is a matter of student expulsion or maybe a manifestation determination in the special ed world. So, you know, a lot of school law is more on the administrative level. I have a ton of experience of staff misconduct, not just with AI, but things like social media, and it's pretty analogous, you know, the educational software side of it. But, you know, if you're going to make pornographic images using AI, it is criminal. It is usually child pornography. And so that necessarily doesn't always end up as case law. But yeah, so I haven't seen any real specific cases yet. We're going to talk about data privacy. I would not be surprised if there's class actions that come out for data privacy, and you'll see why, because some of these tools might be violating students' privacy. So stay tuned. Or maybe I should get into the plaintiff's class action business. Just kidding, Howard. All right, so I'm going to move ahead. This was just kind of my general objective. This was kind of my slide on misconduct, and I don't really like to harp on the negative. It really, truly, so many positive tools. But what I want to talk about next is I basically call it a safety review. Any sort of educational, special education or general education AI tool, there are 5 safety tips. And I'm just trying to boil it down as practical as possible. And the most simple one you can take away from today and share with your team is simply, if you're using open generative AI, like a ChatGPT, do not put in personally identifiable information. No PII. So let's say your team wants to create a IEP. You know, please do not put in the student's name, their disability status, their medical condition, because it's open generative AI and you are resharing that with the world and violating their privacy. So if you want to use ChatGPT maybe to create some anonymized goals and objectives, you know, that might be fine, but even in their personal use, you know, nobody should be putting personally identifiable information into an open generative AI tool. So that's tip number 1, and it's the easiest thing to take back to your district. And again, feel free to jump in and ask any questions or comments at any time. The second tip that I want to share with you all. They have had some level of safety review. So
Sorry, Gretchen.
Yes?
Sorry, Gretchen. I think you froze for a bit. So if you can just go back to, you were talking about the safety tip for. Go for it. I just wanted to say that it was, yeah. You were just finishing this thought when you froze.
I apologize. And folks, I am not at my home office. I'm at a conference speaking on AI, so I'm sorry for the poor connection. They told me it was strong. So my first safety tip is just no PII. And this is the easiest thing you can take back to your districts is to simply never in an open generative AI tool put in personally identifiable information. And did it freeze when I talked about IEPs? Because that's
Yes, it did. Yeah, I did.
Okay. So one thing that has been a temptation for staff is to use open generative AI, ChatGPT, to draft an IEP. And so my concern is that a staff member might use a student's name, their disability status, their medical information, and put it into open generative AI, which would violate their privacy rights. So to have a no PII rule is important. Now, they may be able to use it and anonymize the data and to use it to draft goals and objectives. There may be real practical applications, but you know, simply setting as a baseline rule that nobody should be putting PII into ChatGPT or any open generative AI tool is a good starting place. I see a question over here, and I think it's about Magic School. I'm with a sponsor, Imagine Learning. Oh, sorry. There's background information. The risk of using tools such as Magic School that offers a specific IEP tool. So I have not looked at Magic School in particular. I know it's popular. It says there's an IEP tool. My guess is that it's closed. It's not open. I don't know. I'd look at that. And I would, regardless, if it is an open tool, tell your staff not to put in PII. So that's where I was trying to draw a distinction. See if it's open generative AI, because some districts are using platforms that are open, like a Chat GPT. You covered the PII aspect, but is there any risk in areas such as a predetermination? I would just say that anything that makes a student personally identifiable, if you can anonymize it, then that should be fine. But again, that threshold question, is it open or closed? If it's open, make sure there's no PII being put in there. Okay, the second, what I wanted to move on to was all your educational software goes through a vetting process and should go through a vetting process to make sure that it is safe for students. Sometimes the special ed teams don't know that your business office or your IT office, when they adopt educational software, goes through it with a fine-tooth comb. The special ed tools also need to go through that process. So I want to make sure that your special ed team is linked in with that vetting process. So know at your district, what is the vetting process for data privacy and for software review, and make sure that your special ed tools are run, the software programs are run through that same process, AI or otherwise. And sometimes because a parent is requesting it, that sometimes the school districts don't think that they need to evaluate it for data privacy, but you really do. Sometimes the parents don't really understand what they're asking for and what the implications are from a safety standpoint. Okay, so I'm going to hold some of the questions, I think, for the end. Is that what you're suggesting, Rashika, and get through the content?
Yeah, just so that we can hear the
Okay.
rest of it, and then we can take the questions, because of the time. I just want to be sure that we get
Okay.
a lot of the
That sounds
information
great.
out. Thank you, Gretchen.
Sure, and I could talk for hours, so good. Move me along. All right, so vetting protocol. That's safety tip number 2. Make sure we do a vetting process for data privacy. This one's pretty quick. Notice. So if at your school district, or you want to incorporate this in your guidelines, you have existing educational software. Often there are updates run that you're not even really made aware of, or you're not paying attention to. They just say your terms and conditions have been updated. I go to sleep at night and I wake up and my phone tells me that something's been updated and I don't know what it is. AI is being integrated into a lot of these tools. If that's the case, you want to be on notice. You want to make sure they affirmatively tell you that open AI is being integrated, because it can really change what you've originally understood, what you were adopting, and what the district agreed to. So what some school districts are doing is going to their vendors and saying, if you're going to incorporate open generative AI, you need to affirmatively tell us. And that's what the safety tip is, that's referred to as notice. The 4th safety tip. This one's important, especially in the special education context. I mentioned that I work with the state of California has a chatbot that goes out to students to complete their FAFSA, their financial aid form, and it's emotionally intelligent. And one of the biggest concerns we had from a legal standpoint is who or what is monitoring self-harm threats or threats of violence against the school. It's a huge area of legal liability. Not to mention, we just care about student safety. And so if a school district knew or should have known that there was a threat of violence against the school and failed to stop it, it's significant legal liability. So it's just a layer of protection when you're looking at adopting AI tools that interact directly with students. Is there a mechanism where either the district or the software company is going to be monitoring it for threats? And what is the protocol to notify the district? And what is the response? Is it adequate? And that's probably a whole separate hour-long presentation we can do, but I just want to flag that threat monitoring is, there's an emotional health and well-being crisis out there right now. There's a lot of threats of self-harm, and we need to make sure that if we're using chatbots to interact with students that are emotionally intelligent, that there's an adequate system in place to intercept threats. Relatedly, a lot of your school districts are using counseling tools for mental health with students who offer online counseling tools. They use AI to detect threats. How accurate are they? Again, what is the process? So it's part of your software review process, is what is the threat monitoring detection and response system. Okay. And then the last piece I wanted to go over is parental consent. So Open generative AI likely requires parent permission. And in the special ed context, I would think that if you are creating an IEP for a student where the parent agrees to it, it may be able to be built into the IEP potentially. But I just want to explain parental consent and how it's a significant departure from the way that all the rest of your educational software works. So, excuse me. So I want to explain this to you quickly. It is a bigger legal concept, but FERPA is the federal law that regulates sharing of student records and student educational information. The baseline rule, FERPA came out in the 1960s, long before AI or even computers, but the baseline rule is that if a school district is going to share student data or student educational record, you need parent permission. And then there's a bunch of exceptions. One of those exceptions is called the school official exception, and that's where educational software comes in. All the educational software being used in a district usually falls under the school official exception. And what that says is software is basically operating as a school official. In that, you think of like a student information system. It's, data management. It's performing a function of a school official. Therefore, we don't need parent permission. It's exempt from that because you wouldn't be able to run your data management if you had to get parent permission from each person. So all of your educational software falls under this exception to parent permission. And it has to meet two requirements. The first is that educational software has a legitimate educational interest in the student, and there's a limit on resharing. So I'll use like a learning management system. My kids use something called ARIES 3000, or no, not ARIES, Achieve 3000. It's a reading comprehension program. And that example would be, it has a legitimate educational interest in my student. They read a passage, they answer questions, and then it levels their reading. Okay, has legitimate educational interest, and they limit on who they reshare it with. They only reshare it with their sub-processors. The difference with open generative AI is ChatGPT doesn't necessarily have a legitimate educational interest in the student's record, and there's no limit on the resharing. So our interpretation is that it doesn't fall under that school official exception for parent permission and defaults to the position of needing parent permission. And that's a big departure from all of the educational software currently being used in schools. So if it's being reshared, then you're going to need parent permission. And that's why it's such an important threshold question to know if the tool that a parent is asking for or that a district wants to implement, if it is open generative AI, because if it is, you just need parent permission. And so what does that look like? This is kind of restating what I just said. What does parent permission look like? It is usually a clear explanation of what the educational purpose is of the particular AI software, what data may be collected, how it may be shared. And, the lawyer in me always throws in a district liability waiver. So these are some key components of parental permission, but it's something, again, as you go to do your guidelines, think about, evaluate if it's an open tool and whether or not parent permission is required. Okay, I'm gonna leave time for questions, so I'm gonna keep moving forward. There's so much that can go in your policy. These are just the key legal concepts. I say policy, it can also be guidelines, but I want to talk to you about some of these, 7 key legal concepts that I think your team should be evaluating. The first one is equity. I keep bringing up this chat bot that went out to student cell phones. Well, not every student has a mobile phone. So how can it be equitably available to all students? We made sure that they made it available on one-to-one devices or the district website. So make sure that an AI tool provides for equity. The second component is that it's free of bias. So can you all hear me okay?
No.
I think we have some interference. I don't know if you can mute me. Okay, so one big challenge, as you may already know, is that AI it's getting smarter every day, but it is very biased. I mean, the internet is biased. I have an example where, if you may have seen this, there's a pixelated picture of Barack Obama, and ChatGPT was asked to make a clearer picture, and they turned him into a Caucasian man. Like it's just biased in that regard and possibly racist. I don't know. So there is inherent bias. That is up to your staff in the classroom. If they are using AI to generate a lesson plan, that there is a human final evaluation to make sure that the information that is being delivered to the students is not only biased, but the next point here is accurate. So AI also, as you may know, if it doesn't know the answer, it won't ever say it doesn't know. It generates, it's called hallucinating. It will make up an answer. So there's kind of a famous news story where a lawyer had AI write a legal brief and submit it to a court, and it just made up the case names and made up the sites. So I think about a history teacher might create a lesson plan, and it could have fake names for Civil War battles, or who knows. So I think it's really important that ultimately is incumbent on a staff member. If your district's going to allow them to use generative AI to create lesson plans or sub plans, that there is a human teacher who actually takes a look and makes sure that the content being generated isn't biased and is accurate. Just like you have a curriculum and instruction team that evaluates the textbooks that are being adopted. So the fourth point, I kind of went through this with the vetting recommendation, is that you have data privacy evaluation. There may be, we talked about consent, so you may need a permission element in your guidelines. I referenced briefly at the beginning, there may be staff and labor implications. So is there a duty to bargain working conditions, but from using AI? And then finally, I think the one that's the most common being adopted into student acceptable use policies is just this, blanket prohibition on misconduct. So if and when misconduct occurs, you have the ability to hold them accountable. So that is, I have kind of a closing slide I'll come back to, but I wanted to kind of zip through all of that and spend the next few minutes answering some of your questions, or let's see, got another one in here. Most companies we've looked into use open AIs like ChatGPT. You can ask for documentation if your data is shared. Sorry, this isn't scrolling very easily.
Gretchen, do you want me to read them out?
Sure. I think I'm on the last one now. What if an IEP
Okay.
determines that a student can use AI to respond to assignments as an accommodation? What should we consider? I think in that case, that's a great question. I think if they're going to use AI to respond to assignments, then again, it's making sure that it's, the answers are free of bias, that they're accurate, that, obviously the staff member is, knows that they're using AI to answer it. But I think I think what's going to be critical is that they still have the learning component. It's not just to, I think, this is more getting into the weeds of the education part, but we still want to make sure the students getting the education, and it's not a way to circumvent the education, but it's more of a tool to allow them to get there, like a note-taking tool. They're still learning, but they're using the note-taking to help them. So again, I just think that bias and accuracy, data privacy are the really key, and any guidelines for misconduct, but those would be the key components that I would see would be really important. And Howard, feel free to chime in if you have any more. All right, just the shout out for Magic School is the only other one that I saw, which I have not vetted. I have not looked at their data privacy. I hear it's popular, but I don't know if it's open generative AI or not. Okay, any other questions? I do have a closing slide of information that I also wanted to share. And Howard and I have my email address, and we can also, Howard, if you want to type yours in the chat. Again, Howard is our special education expert, and he will be at the conference in Portland. I'm not going to be able to attend there, but I have provided my email address and my contact information if you all have any follow-up questions as you go to develop your policies. Let's see. So
I think there's a question. There's a question about how have people been using AI to make prior written notice for an IEP?
I can speak to that real briefly. We do have school districts that have asked us, can we use OpenAI to write prior written notice letters? I am aware that OpenAI knows what a prior written notice letter is. So when you ask for a prior written notice letter, the open generative AI knows what are the requirements to go into a prior written notice letter and might actually draft one for you. The questions or the concerns that we have are all of those data privacy concerns that Gretchen has raised. So we would want to make sure that if it is an open system, that you're not using personally identifiable student information when you're drafting that prior written notice letter. If you're going to use open generative AI, you want to also ensure the accuracy of the information that's being included in the letter. Sometimes they'll refer to code sections, whether it's the Code of Federal Regulations or the United States Code, and they may be inaccurate references. So you're going to need to check everything before you actually send out a letter that's been generated by AI.
And Leela put a comment in the chat that I think goes back to the question that was being asked earlier, and I thought it was really interesting about the use of AI for student writing. And you commented here that, you know, the blurry line is, and you hit the nail on the head. If they're using it to write an essay, and that's part of their accommodation in their IEP, that's great, except there's also the staff member has standards that are a rubric that they're looking for in that writing. And, you know, we don't know if AI will always meet that rubric and put the student at a disadvantage. So there needs to be communication between the instructor and make sure they know the student is using AI, and maybe the rubric can also be fed into the AI, but it definitely creates a blurry line for sure.
And I guess I would say what Lauren was referring to was the difference between an accommodation and a modification. And if you're looking to assess a student's writing ability and you allow them to use generative AI, that would be a modification because you're changing the standard to which you're holding the student accountable. But if you're not changing the standard to which you're holding the student accountable, then it would be an accommodation. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And so I just, you know, feel free to keep feeding us questions, but I just kind of want to, I do have this closing slide because I think for some folks, like they think of lawyers as being, you know, defending the school district for a lawsuit from a special education parent or something. But Howard and I's role is much more proactive than that. We at F3 Law, we try to partner with districts to help you draft your policy, to do preventative law, to prevent the lawsuits. We also do that contract review process. We do student data privacy compliance on a national level. We wrote the National Student Data Privacy Agreement, and we do the training. We do the professional development for staff and for students. I mentioned I'm at an AI conference. I am the speaker for the day. I'm doing a workshop with school districts on how to draft their guidelines. We love doing this type of work. We can do it virtually, and we'd be happy to partner with you. I also want to mention, just to toot our own horn, but it's also important for you district leaders, there was a Supreme Court decision this week, because I work in ed tech, so it was an ed tech news alert. There was a Supreme Court decision that came out this week about the use of social media for school district officials and specifically school board members. And our firm, I went to the US Supreme Court. It was a unanimous decision in support of school board members and public officials about how they can control their social media sites. This is a very big topic, especially with an election coming up and how they run their campaigns on social media. So if that is something that your district has questions about, I just wanted to flag that's something that we actually wrote the brief, and we're really happy with the result, but it changes the dynamic and the requirements for, you know, school superintendents, school officials, state board of ed, all you folks on how to navigate your social media. So just flag. Any other questions that you saw up there, Urban Collaborative friends? I know we went quick at the end there.
No, it's totally fine. It's because I do think that people are going to ask a lot of questions, and these questions are going to keep coming. I know that there was a comment that that I think Carmen put in the chat, which was a very, I think, a nice comment to close us with. That when, wait, I'm going to try to find her comment, the comment over here. It was around having to understand for students to be able to even feed in the information about what they need in OpenAI. I think another blurry line is that learning to prompt AI effectively is more complex than it may seem. And I think I want to go back to something that Gretchen, you said earlier about the fact that students, this is part of the learning that our students are going to need to do. So that's why we can't shun it, right? Because they are going to be living in the system where AI is going to be used. And that's something that all of our students, including our students with disabilities, are going to learn, need to learn how to use that technology and use it well, with these safety precautions and things kept in mind, and to be able to keep those concerns that you raised today in mind when they're doing the using this technology, as they have with other technologies. So we want to thank you for your time, Gretchen. This has been extremely, extremely, extremely informative, and I know that there are going to be a lot more questions. Howard, watch out for, as you have been for all of our conferences. In all of our conferences, people have a lot of questions for you around this and other topics. We thank all the participants for your time, and we hope that you all are leaving today thinking about some next steps. I know there was something that somebody asked about board policy. So yes, I think that many of you have questions and many thoughts about what needs to happen next. Reach out to us at Urban Collaborative, or reach out to Gretchen, has left her information over there, and you have Howard's information in the chat. As we shared in the beginning, we will have this recording for all of you available after this this meeting, and it will be shared on the Urban Collaborative website, as all of our collab talks, collab PDs, all resources that Urban Collaborative has. It's on our website, urbancollaborative.org. With that, we want to thank Gretchen again from F3 Law and all of you for joining. Thank you, and see you next time.